Here we go. Secondary break. Graham Bunn, former D1 college basketball point guard. Got my brother, Mr. Zach Talitsky, Carolina alum. Let's get into this. Wake Forest, we're not going to waste any time. I know Zach's battling a little bug here. Not feeling great, but you know what champions do? They strap it up. They lace their boots up. They put on their shoes and they play. No, make no excuses. Play like a champion. So he's here. Wake Forest comes into the Dean Dome. We handle business. We're up to fourth in the country at the moment. I think that's going to move up to 3. 85-64. We roll 16-3, 8-0 in the conference, standing alone. And I believe a 2-game lead over everybody, but honestly, a 3-game lead if you count the tiebreakers that we hold over the people that we're on top of right now. How you feeling? That was a wonderful, as a Carolina game, as a Carolina fan, wonderful game to watch.
Yeah. Of course, you got to start with RJ and him setting his career high with 36. He was just giving it to him from all 3 levels, and we've talked before about what a good 3-level scorer he is. But they're trying to take away the 3 in the first half, and he's just sort of hitting those mid-range floaters all night, which is those are tough shots. But I mean, he's just
not easy.
Them.
Yeah, it was great. I made a couple notes going down the stretch, and again, we'll just piggyback the fact that RJ was in fuego and continues to be, in my opinion, the best guard in the country right now. I am completely biased, and maybe I'm wrong, but I do believe he supplanted himself as the front runner for ACC Player of the Year, and I do believe the way that he's scoring the ball with the efficiency that he's doing it. I'll have to pull up the box score. But I believe he shot the ball over 50% from the floor, over 50%, or maybe 50% from 3. I think he's in the National Player of the Year running at the moment. And I do believe that Hubert Davis is in the conversation for National Coach of the Year. So, winning cures all, and superlatives come with winning. Carolina is doing it at a higher clip than anyone in the country, I believe, even UConn at this moment in time. I mean, UConn survived some close ones. Carolina has just been taking down some big wins on the road. And then when you roll Wake Forest like that in the second half and handle its business like it is, I just feel like there's a lot of guys that might be taking home some hardware at the end of the season.
Yeah, I feel like RJ for sure should be the favorite for ACC Player of the Year. And, I mean, everyone seems to be handing the National Player of the Year to Zach Edey, although, still ways to go. So we'll see. But I mean, if RJ wins ACC Player of the Year, in his first team All-American, I mean that's the level he's playing at, and that's an incredible accomplishment. Either one of those two things, and well deserved for the way he's playing. And I mean, if Hubert were to win, he would win 2 out of his first 3 years as a coach. So that's pretty good too.
Yeah, that's nice. Always well. Yeah. He's like, all right, how do I reset the deck? I'm gonna take a dip year and then come back with a fire. You know what I mean? Maybe this was all his plan. Who knows? Which superlatives conversation for a different time. Like I said, I know that you're battling something, so we greatly appreciate you making time to do this. I wanted to get into why you felt the turnaround and the drastic difference between the ability to dominate the game from the first half to the second half. Like, what do you think stood out to you the most? What do you think the changes, or, was it something that we made adjustments at halftime? What was the difference for you in Carolina coming out in the second half and just punching Wake Forest in the mouth and never letting off the gas?
Well, yeah, I think the defense was pretty consistent both halves, and the defense kept us in it the first half when, otherwise we really weren't playing all that well, particularly, not on the offensive end other than RJ and Cadeau, getting into the lane, but really nobody else was doing anything.
Yeah.
And so, one of my keys to the game, was from the 3-point line, what is going to be the difference? And what's the point spread from the 3-point line? And can we be sort of close to neutral? And in the first half, I think they made 3 threes. Plus, we fouled Carr, I think, on a 3-point shot. I think Cadeau did.
We did.
Questionable call. But anyway, so if you count that as a 3, which I do, they were really plus 12 from beyond the arc in the first half, because I don't think we made one.
We did. And I think we were 0 for 8 in the first half from 3.
Yeah. And then the second half, I don't think they made any. And then we made 5 of 7, I think. I
Mhm.
think RJ was like 4 of 6, and then I think Cormac put one in. So anyway, so that that's a 15-point turnaround, and then for the game, we ended up outscoring them from three for a team that's one of the better 3-point shooting teams in the country. Had just come off of I think 18 makes
Mhm.
against Louisville to win that particular statistical battle, and then particularly in the second half to have that big of a turnaround, I think had a huge impact. And then the defense remained consistent.
Yeah, agreed. I was really pleased with you brought this up a couple shows ago and said look, when Elliott and RJ are on the floor together, sometimes we can struggle with bigger backcourts. And Salas, bigger guard. I'm drawing a blank on the young man. I think he's from Ireland. He's big, strong, took advantage of
Hildreth,
Hildreth in the
yeah,
mid post. And I've seen him. He's tough and he plays hard. That was a tough matchup. I was really proud of our guys at the way they were able to hold up defensively because I think our guards offensively are, and I know Salas is having a great year, and I'm not knocking him. He seems to be a very talented player, and he's it was good to see a guy like that because we're going to see some down the stretch. So it was really cool to see how the team adjusted and kind of kept him in check for the most part because he came out strong and came out quick. But I loved how our guard stood up. And at the end of the day, you look at the box score and you're like, oh wow, we rolled. But it was a tougher task than I think the final score will tell you. I mean, they got going, and I think we figured out something. In the tournament run, we started doing high pick and rolls with Baycott, and we had floor spacers like Brady Manick on the side. Well, Elliot Cadeau started having a lot of success in the run. Is like right around the 950 mark, and Wake Forest. I made a note of it. Wake Forest's bench is screaming. You could hear it on the broadcast to go under all ball screens with Elliot Cadeau, and so like 2 plays later, RJ started taking the ball and being the initiator and getting the high ball screen, and he just started feasting. Like it was either they went over top because you can't go under on ball screens on RJ. He was hitting floaters, and after that element, they just couldn't figure it out, and RJ just started slicing them up, and it was amazing. And I think once you start hitting shots, especially in a game at home, crowd gets behind you. It's really tough to stop some momentum like that. And I loved getting RJ in the pick and roll and then kind of working off him, which was great.
yeah, yeah. I mean, going back to your original point about defending the guards, I think to me the key was Boopy Miller, and he's incredibly quick.
Yeah.
And I think Cadeau kept him in front. I think he's averaging 17, 38% from three. He ended up with
Mhm.
5. By the way, they're top 4 guys who all are averaging over 14 points and all
Mhm.
shoot above 38% from three. None of them had a single made three in the game. Like that, you
Yeah.
know how hard that is to do for 4 guys who can shoot. But I think part of the reason is because Miller wasn't really able to break his guy down and get paint touches and penetration and spray the ball to open shooters because
Yep.
we basically controlled him. And a lot of that has to do with Cadeau, and I'm sure RJ was on him some, and Trimble. Those other guys, were sort of forced to create on their own, and they weren't just getting the free open looks that I think they've been getting for much of the year. I mean, they
Yeah.
had 3 assists for the game. I mean,
Yeah.
so what that
That's
tells
good.
me is that the defense is taking away, all their preferred actions. They're taking away the dribble drive where, we have to collapse and then they're able to kick it out. To,
Yeah.
to only get 3 assists means that, most of their scoring is coming kind of one-on-one type moves. And they got some good players. And so of course they're able to score sometimes doing that. But if you do that and slow down the flow of the offense, I think you're gonna have a ton of success. So yeah, I couldn't that 3-man guard rotation we have working right now. I mean they're
I
they're
love it.
they're all doing a little bit different things, but doing it at an incredibly high level.
Yeah.
Um,
Before we move off the guards, because I did want to talk about Washington, 5 minutes, 4 points. He had a nice dunk off a feed from RJ off one of those high ball screens, which he kind of got in drag action, dumped it off to the big dunk, which was awesome, and I love to see it. Uh, RJ Davis, 14 of 23, 4 or 5 from the line, 36 points in 37 minutes. I'd love to know how many of those misses were in the first half because I remember watching the game and him missing some good looks and being like, oh, man, he usually doesn't miss that. Then he missed a free throw. I'm like, oh, he usually doesn't miss that. So once he got going, it just never stopped. I mean,
Mm-mm.
I'd love to know what he shot in the second half. I don't have it in front of me. But when you give a player who seems to, I don't know Archie Davis, but we did a thing. Unfortunately, you had to miss it. We did a little conversation with Kenny Williams, and he talked about RJ Davis being a guy with just unbelievable, supreme confidence in himself, and as he should, he's incredibly talented. But you add on top of that the feeling of, oh, I'm hot. I just give me a look. Let me see the rim. It's going in. And I think that's what we watched down the stretch with RJ last night because I felt like it was a slow start, and then he just exploded.
Yeah, I think most of those misses were in the first, 4 to 6 minutes of the game, and then you're right, once he got going, and it just seemed like he wasn't gonna let us lose.
Yeah,
It was one of those games where he's just like, once he started feeling it, he's like, we're not gonna lose this game.
yeah.
And then once he got cooking, everybody kind of jumped on board and the crowd got going and the game sort of took on a life of its own. But really, he pulled us through that stretch, coming out of halftime down one.
Mhm,
Yeah, we had a couple of chances, I thought, in the first half to break it open, and it just didn't quite happen.
mhm.
So I wasn't really feeling that bad at halftime. I felt like we were getting really good looks for most of the first half. It's just we were missing some stuff that normally goes in, and so I'm a little surprised by the final score, but not totally shocked that we sort of came back and won handily.
Yeah, also a note here, and I can't remember the action, but, the very first play of the game, also, I was like, "Oh, I love what they drew up there for RJ." Ended up being a flare screen. RJ gets a great look from 3 to start it off. He misses it, but again, like you said, you put shooters like that, especially RJ Davis, in a position where they're getting clean looks, for the most part, you're going to have a high success rate. And I thought just coming out, I wanted to give the coaching staff or whatever set they drew up, like they're finding creative ways to get guys looks, and that was predominantly one of my biggest concerns when you and I started doing this. Is RJ was making tough shots and finding his shots in transition. I wanted to see us give him certain sets, certain looks that would provide him the ability to not necessarily have to create his own shot, have the set create it for him. And they've been doing that. It was super great to see. I know he didn't knock it down, but I think those more than likely go in most of the time.
Yeah, they've been running that motion, I think, a fair amount, which I like the play where they'll have RJ initiate at the top. There's like a high ball screen with Baycott. Um, and then he sort of curls around to the wing, and then maybe we'll throw it into Ingram, and then Ingram does his post up,
Yeah.
and then Baycott goes and sort of back screens RJ's man, and he flares back out to the top,
Yeah.
and so then Ingram has like a two-way go, right? Like he's got his guy to try to post up, and he's been really really good, especially on that right block.
Yeah. Turning
Um,
left shoulder, he's tough.
Yeah, yeah, and then if not, he has RJ kind of getting that back flare screen to the top. So they've run that a fair amount, and I think almost every time it seems like they get open looks. I agree with you. It just we've definitely I think taken another step in terms of offensive execution, and
Mhm.
I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's on the coaching staff. I don't know if that's having good experienced players. I just don't. I'm not sure what to
Yeah.
to chalk it up to, but you can
Mhm.
definitely feel it.
I didn't get a chance to look at the Ken Palm rankings, and again, I don't think that completely tells the tale of the tape. But I gotta imagine that we're just continually trending upward. I mean, the team looks great on offense, and I feel like they get better on defense every game, which is great. And I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Kenny Williams when he and I were talking. And again, if anybody is watching this and you happen to miss it, we had national champion. He was a team captain and just an all around great guy, former player. Kenny Williams jumped on and started chopping it up about some of the guys in the summer, their work ethic, and kind of pulled the curtain back a little bit on some of the players, which was really cool. He was talking about just the ability of the guys to strap in, lock in, and get after it, and some of the reason why some of the team's success. Marcus Page being one of those. Obviously sometimes you don't necessarily look down the bench. Zach, you've mentioned it before on certain teams. You're like, oh, I don't understand why something's disconnecting. They've got a great staff. He told some really cool stories about Marcus Page and his impact on some of the guards, namely RJ Davis and Seth Trimble, which was really, really cool.
Yeah, it was a great interview. I'm sorry I missed it, but I did watch, and I thought it was really fascinating hearing him talk about the different tone in the summer workouts and how hungry everybody showed up this year and how serious those were. And it wasn't just the young guys. I think he talked about in prior years. The young guys kind of get indoctrinated, but the old guys might be coasting. But he's like, not this year. Everybody came in just competing. Yeah. And it has carried over. The consistency, I think we've talked about this before, but the consistency of this team is also pretty remarkable. It doesn't feel like we have a bunch of highs and lows. This was our 6th game in 3 days, down at halftime. Maybe you say, oh, they're a little tired, or, we've had this good stretch. Right. We can let go of the rope here, but there was no let going of the, that didn't happen. They, of course, came out in the second half and stomped them. So, yeah, it's carrying through, and it's great to hear his insights.
Well, I haven't told you this, so this will be in real time. I'm going to throw out a name. We were supposed to have a guest tonight. It just didn't work out, and that's fine. We'll end up making it work some other time. But after what went down for whatever reason, and if they want to come on here, they can defend themselves for not being here tonight. But I'm going to give you a name of a former player. A lot of people, I don't want to say a lot of people, but some people might not recognize this name. But big Hollywood actor, played basketball at Wake Forest, was going to come on and chop it up. And literally the note that I got was, I don't want to talk about last night's game. Mark Blucas. Do you remember that name? He was a shooter.
I do kind of
He played with Tim Duncan and those Wake teams. And so I know him through Daria Sangala, who played at Wake Forest, who we were trying to get on, and Randolph Childress. Sangala is out on the road coaching in the NBA. And so there's some other people that have agreed to come on and do the show. So hopefully you'll be feeling up to it, and schedules will permit, because you were missed, and it was really cool to chop it up with Kenny. He wants to come back. But I hated that you weren't there, because you and I have been doing this, and it's fun for us to do it, and I wanted you to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, it'd be great to have him back. He was awesome. So love to speak with him.
Yeah. All right. So moving forward, and again, I'd love, you and I have been, throwing talk points back and forth and some things that we want to get into. I would love to talk about the national landscape here moving forward very soon, but we're going to make this show a short one. So just getting into Saturday's game, Florida State in Tallahassee, what are you thinking? At some point, and this is a conversation that a lot of people are mixed on, at some point, a loss is going to almost, in my opinion, be good for us. Like, you always hear those teams. I think it was, drawing a blank on his name, St. Joe's, years and years ago. They go 32-0. They get a number 1 seed heading into March. It's like, I feel like the tension and like the pressure of being undefeated adds an element of difficulty that just doesn't necessarily you need, to exist when you're going into March. It's hard enough to make a Final Four run, less win a national championship, when you're adding other variables on it. Do you think running the table in the ACC is a good thing, bad thing? Do you think we can do it? Like, what are you thinking right here? Because at one point in time, you said if we go 3-1 over the next 4 heading into the Duke game, you'd be happy. Where do you sit now?
I mean, if we ran the table in the ACC regular season, I would take it, just because that to me is an incredible accomplishment. Mm-hmm. I used to say that I didn't really like winning the ACC tournament, because I felt like the years that we won the national championship, we did not win the ACC tournament.
That is correct.
I don't know if that's actually right or not, but it always felt that way to me. And something about like losing, refocus the team. And also, sometimes you get a little bit more rest. I think they've moved. It used to be on a Sunday, the ACC championship, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Saturday now.
Now it's Saturday, so you can get an extra day, so it's not as big of a deal. But
I'm trying to get you to go. But I'm trying to get you to go. Like me and you hanging out, kicking it, brothers, taking on the Carolina games. It'll be good.
But yeah, I mean, if we were to somehow run the table in the ACC, that would be incredible. But then I probably would feel like we needed to lose in the ACC tournament just because it's an
Hmm.
old, I don't
Wives'
know.
tale or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all right. All right. Well, how do you feel about Saturday's game? We'll table the undefeated stuff and the table talk for another time. But how do you feel about the game? I think this will be outside of the UConn. I just have a respect for UConn after watching that. I feel like at that moment in time, UConn was a better basketball team than us, and I think that's the only team I would say that about since playing this season. We've beaten Florida State. We beat them at home, but we beat them early. I feel like they've really come into their own. I think they're coming off a tough loss, Clemson at home. They're going to be, like you said, they're going to be refocused. We're going to get their best shot. I think it's tough. I think it's going to be the second hardest game we've played this year.
Well, I assume that they're going to be working on the press break this week. That
Yeah.
game was getting away from us in Chapel Hill until the press. So I don't know.
Right.
I think that's going to be interesting to watch. If nothing else, is how early
Mhm.
does Hubert deploy that, and then can that be effective again? But yeah, I feel like they always play us very tough in Tallahassee. So I'm expecting it to be a tough game. But that first one also happened, I think, before that we really locked in on defense, the way
Mhm.
that we have now, and they went off in the first half. I don't remember how many threes that they made. So I'm anticipating us playing better than we did in that game at home as well. So yeah, I like our chances, but I also expect it'll be hard fought.
Mm. As it sits right now, Carolina's on top of the ACC at 8-0. Are you surprised at all? NC State is number 2, Florida State at number 3, and I guess NC State owns the tiebreaker right now over Florida State. And then Duke at 4. Obviously, Duke dropping 1, which I know you were texting me. I wasn't able to watch, but I did watch it on DVR a little bit later. I was doing something. Duke dropped 1 at home to Pitt, which again, anyone can win any game in the ACC, but I was a little shocked by that.
Can I ask you? I have two questions about that I'd like to
Okay.
ask.
All right.
Since you brought it up.
Yeah.
So the first one is, what did you think about Blake Henson jumping up on the scorer's table in front of the student section after the win? As a former player, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm in the Duke locker room and I wasn't aware of it, it would make me want to also do something insanely disrespectful and I would never want that if I was on the court. I'm surprised that didn't start some sort of altercation. We'll just put it lightly. And I'm not advocating for violence in any way, shape, or form. I did that one time in my career, and it was a big win. There was some things going on within the team that one of our players sat the game out, and we played a team that when that player played, we lost, and when this player sat out, we won by 30. And so at the end of the game, I jumped up on the table. Now we were at home, and I was just cheering with our crowd. So there was no animosity, there was no giving the bird, and there was no. But it's going to end up being an iconic photo for him for all time. But if I was on the Duke basketball team, I would not have taken that very well at all. Without sounding like a tough guy, I'm not a tough guy. It just that would have caused a problem if someone did that in our house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see both sides of it. I mean, on one hand, I do think I don't think it's like a premeditated thing. He's just excited. The guy
No,
went
of
seven
course.
for seven for
And he's
seven
still
from
a
three.
kid. I mean, I get he's still relatively a kid. You know what I mean? And so like it's not like he did anything unforgivable. That is dangerous though.
It is. It
There
is.
have been instances in sports, LeGarrette Blunt, his incident in on the football field, and people are gonna say, well, football players are different. Kids are kids. And
Yeah,
when,
that
you
Pacers
know,
thing in the NBA.
yeah,
Yeah.
malice in the palace. Like it's just
Mhm.
it's definitely and not to say Duke's the place to do it because there's no place to do it. There's a lot of Duke jokes to be had from the Carolina side of things right now, but I'm gonna stay away from that and just say, yeah, I thought it was, I mean, obviously very disrespectful, but I'm glad nothing else came out of it other than okay. I don't even know if the coaches, did they address it? Did anyone say anything? Has that been a thing at all?
I've not heard if either of the coaches addressed it or not. But that does lead me to my second question about
All
Shire.
right.
So
Okay, cool.
he did come out after the game and apologize for like how they played. I guess he
Mm,
apologized to the fan base, um, which seems to be like a Duke coach thing to do whenever they lose. So
yeah.
this one rubs me the wrong way for some reason.
Okay. All right.
Uh,
Hit me.
d-
Hit me.
well, because to me, if I'm like a
Here we
player,
go.
uh,
Here we go.
if I'm a player and I'm like, why is my coach like apologizing to the fan base for our play? I mean, you know, like it's fine in practice. Like let's go through film. Like if you want to dress
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
down, you
Sure.
know, if I didn't do some things I need to do, I mean that's your job to like tell me. But like publicly like apologize.
Yeah. I'm
I
not
don't know.
for it.
Like yeah, I mean
I'm
like
not for it.
if you were a player and the coach goes out in the press and was like, yeah, I'm sorry for how Graham played. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like it.
Luckily, I'm sure there's been times where coaches wanted to do that when I played. Never has it happened, but yeah, I'm with you. I if I'm in that locker room, I would feel almost betrayed a little bit. Like, hey, like, behind closed doors, say whatever you got to say, do whatever you got to do to make us and bring out the best in us, but don't involve the public or don't involve the fans. And I'm a fan, so I'm not talking down to the fans, but there's just certain things that you don't do. I wouldn't have appreciated that as a player.
Yeah, I also find it a little bit disrespectful to the opponent. Like Coach K did
Oh, of course.
the same thing when they beat them when we beat them in Cameron in his last regular season game. And
Yeah,
I'm sorry, for how we played. And I'm like, I mean, it gives no credit to the opposition for coming in with some fight and
yeah,
playing
that bit him
well.
a little bit because I think in that speech he said it wouldn't happen again.
Yeah, yeah,
And then it
yeah.
happened again, the same, like to end his career. So I think that'll bite you. That's a two-way sword. And again, look, there's a lot of animosity, and I got into it. I got to get off social media. I got into it with someone that I grew up with about Coach K. Like, I'll never understand why Duke or Carolina fans have this infatuation with Coach K and Duke. And I'm like, really? Like, it's a big rivalry, and obviously, Coach K is questionably one of the greatest coaches of any sport of all time, and it's you enjoy beating people that are great. So there's that enjoyment. And Coach K was good to me. Coach K honestly had a very small moment in my life where he vouched for me and put in a good word when I needed it. And so I have a lot of respect for Coach K. But I definitely, when he said that, like, oh, and it won't happen again, and like, again, change the narrative of senior night, his last home game. And it was more about, oh, we didn't do what we were supposed to do, and nothing about the opponent, which was us, Carolina, doing what they needed to do. That didn't, I obviously didn't like that either.
Yeah.
So I'm,
Anyway,
I'm with you.
I thought both those things were interesting after the game.
Yeah.
And it gives us a reason to talk about Duke losing. So worth bringing up.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And again, there's a few people that have been commenting, which I greatly appreciate anybody commenting or anyone watching this or telling their friends about it. That got on me a little bit because our account posted the photo of Henson on the table. So, again, I should probably take that down, which I will now. Thinking about it, it was a little disrespectful, and I'm just glad nothing came out of it. But great question, man. Great question. All right, so we roll Saturday. Hopefully you feel better. We'll get on here, and there's a few people that actually want to jump on, so maybe we will have a guest. But until then, it's go Heels, baby.
Go Heels.